The moment the palace doors closed that morning, the future of the British crown may have changed forever. No music, no royal ceremony, no smiling photographs for the press, just a quiet room deep inside Buckingham Palace where doctors delivered a sentence so chilling it sent a shockwave through the royal bloodline itself. Time is running out. And what happened in the hours after that whispered warning may reveal one of the most controversial decisions in modern royal history. Because, according to insiders, Prince William didn't simply wait. He moved, quickly, quietly, and some say decisively. Inside the palace, the air reportedly felt heavy, almost suffocating. Medical files lay across the table like silent evidence of a reality no one wanted to speak aloud. Four figures sat facing one another, and when the chief physician finished explaining the king's condition, the words he used reportedly froze the room in place. The timeline, shorter than expected, not years, not even many months. Suddenly, the monarchy was staring at something it hadn't faced in generations, the possibility that the crown might have to move faster than tradition allows. And then came the question that reportedly echoed through that chamber like a ticking clock. The king asked only one thing: how much time remains? No anger, no panic, just the cold necessity of knowing exactly where the boundary of time stood. The answer wasn't a number. It didn't need to be. The message was clear enough. Every contingency plan the monarchy had ever written suddenly needed to be ready now. But within hours, the palace shifted into a mode rarely seen by the public. Schedules vanished. Meetings appeared behind closed doors. Communications tightened. And according to internal sources, only 4 individuals were fully briefed on the severity of the situation: Queen Camilla, Prince William, the king's private secretary, and the Archbishop of Canterbury. Everyone else remained outside the circle. Information control became the first line of defense. Because the one thing the monarchy fears more than illness is uncertainty. But the most explosive moment came the next morning, before sunrise. That's when Prince William reportedly received the call. A short message, careful language, yet one phrase carried everything he needed to know. Timeline shorter than expected. In that instant, the heir to the throne understood that the crisis had moved from speculation to preparation. Witnesses say William didn't react with emotion, not publicly. Instead, there was silence, several long minutes of it. And then the calls began. Advisors, constitutional experts, strategic planners. One by one, they were summoned to a meeting room inside the palace that insiders reportedly call the war room. No cameras, no royal formality, just lawyers, strategists, and one uncomfortable question hanging over the table: what happens if the crown cannot wait? History shows that a monarchy survives on certainty. The moment authority looks uncertain, speculation spreads. And speculation is dangerous. Markets react. Governments react. Public confidence begins to shake. William understood this perfectly. So the conversation that unfolded inside that room wasn't emotional. It was surgical. 3 questions dominated the meeting. First, if the king could no longer perform his duties, what legal structure would allow authority to shift temporarily? Second, how could the palace inform the public without triggering panic across Britain and the Commonwealth? And third, how could the royal family maintain the image of absolute stability even as everything behind the scenes was shifting? One number reportedly kept appearing in those discussions: 48 hours. That was the maximum window advisors believed the palace could contain the situation before rumors began leaking. After that, silence itself would become suspicious. So contingency messages were drafted, public statements prepared, legal documents reviewed. But here's the twist many observers still argue about. William did not ask advisors to plan his coronation. Instead, he asked them to prepare for something far more complicated: a controlled transfer of authority without creating the appearance of a power grab. In his words, according to insiders, the monarchy cannot survive prolonged ambiguity. Still, not everyone in that room agreed with the speed of his approach. Some advisors reportedly warned that moving too quickly could look impatient, or worse, opportunistic. After all, the king was still alive. The crown had not been vacated. William's response reportedly came without hesitation. Waiting would be the greater danger. If other institutions sensed a vacuum of authority, they would fill it themselves. And once that happened, the royal family would be reacting to events instead of controlling them. In other words, the crown cannot afford to hesitate. That philosophy marked the beginning of a shift many historians now call unprecedented. Because instead of waiting for events to unfold naturally, William began preparing the monarchy to move before the crisis became public. Documents were drafted, communications prepared, diplomatic channels quietly opened with key Commonwealth leaders. Every step was designed to ensure that if the moment came, the crown would move smoothly, almost invisibly. But behind all those preparations stood one unavoidable reality. None of it could happen without the king's approval. approval, but which meant everything now depended on a conversation that would soon take place behind a closed palace door. A meeting that insiders say lasted exactly 42 minutes. No witnesses, no official record, just a father and the son who might soon replace him. And what happened during those 42 minutes may have changed the direction of the monarchy forever. The meeting between the king and Prince William took place at an hour that never appeared on any public schedule, and that alone tells you how serious the situation had become. No secretaries, no advisors, no official record, just two men sitting across from each other in a private room inside Buckingham Palace while the future of the monarchy quietly hung in the balance. According to informed internal sources, the conversation lasted exactly 42 minutes. Not an hour, not a brief exchange. 42 minutes that insiders now believe may have reshaped the royal hierarchy forever. What makes this meeting so fascinating and controversial is the way it reportedly unfolded. There was no dramatic confrontation, no emotional breakdown, none of the explosive scenes people might imagine when power is at stake. Instead, William approached the moment like a strategist, calm, direct, almost clinical. According to sources familiar with the discussion, he did not present demands or ultimatums. Instead, he laid out the contingency plans that had been prepared in the war room, the legal options, the communication strategies, the pathways that could allow the monarchy to transition smoothly if the king's health prevented him from carrying the full weight of the crown. For Charles, the moment carried a lifetime of meaning. This was the role he had waited decades to inherit, a position that defined his identity and his duty. To even consider stepping back, even partially, meant acknowledging something deeply personal, that the limits of the human body had collided with the responsibilities of the crown. Sources say the king remained composed during the conversation, but the weight of the decision was unmistakable. And then he reportedly posed a question that cut directly to the heart of the dilemma. If I continue appearing publicly but cannot fully discharge my responsibilities, would that cause greater harm to the institution? That question signaled something important. It meant the king was no longer thinking only about holding the throne, he was thinking about protecting it. And according to leaks that later surfaced among royal insiders, the outcome of those 42 minutes was not an abdication. There was no dramatic surrender of the crown, no constitutional declaration. Instead, a quieter and far more modern solution emerged. Charles would remain king in title, but operational authority, the day-to-day leadership of royal duties and international representation, would gradually shift to William. In effect, the monarchy had entered a new phase where the title remained unchanged, but the center of gravity quietly moved toward the heir. What followed in the days after that meeting only deepened the mystery surrounding the palace. The king's public appearances suddenly dropped to almost nothing. Official schedules shrank. Engagements were reassigned. Carefully worded palace statements repeated the same phrase again and again: the king is resting under medical supervision. But the more those statements appeared, the more questions they created, because the public noticed something unusual. Days passed, then weeks, and there were almost no new images of the reigning monarch at all. For a monarchy built on symbolism and visibility, that silence was deafening. Political observers began quietly asking how much authority had already shifted behind the scenes. Members of parliament reportedly raised concerns in private discussions about whether a regency should formally be declared if the situation continued. Meanwhile, social media erupted with speculation. Some voices claimed the king was simply recovering. Others pushed far more extreme theories, suggesting that something much larger was being hidden from the public. None of those claims were verified, but the lack of clear information allowed them to spread. At the same time, Prince William's presence on the world stage suddenly expanded. He appeared at diplomatic meetings, represented the crown at major events, and took on responsibilities that traditionally belonged to the monarch himself. Beside him stood Catherine, who began appearing more frequently in major ceremonial roles. Analysts noticed the shift immediately. Without any official announcement, the royal spotlight had quietly moved. The king remained the sovereign, yet the faces representing the monarchy to the world were increasingly William and Catherine. But just when it seemed the transition might unfold quietly, another unpredictable element entered the story. A name that had long been associated with tension inside the royal family suddenly resurfaced in private conversations: Prince Harry. According to aviation and security sources, his arrival in London was arranged with extraordinary secrecy. No public announcement, no official welcome, yet the timing was impossible to ignore. He returned precisely when rumors about the king's health and the shifting power structure were reaching their peak. Insiders say Harry requested a direct meeting with his brother almost immediately. The conversation that followed reportedly lasted less than an hour, but its impact echoed far beyond those 60 minutes. According to sources briefed afterward, Harry opened the discussion with a blunt accusation: "Father has not died, but the way you are acting makes people think he has." The statement revealed a deep divide in how the two brothers viewed the unfolding transition. For Harry, accelerating the shift of authority while the king still lived risked appearing disrespectful. For William, delaying action risked plunging the monarchy into uncertainty. uncertainty. The meeting ended without reconciliation. No photographs of unity, no joint statement to calm the media storm, just silence. Yet behind the palace walls, the machinery of preparation continued to move forward. Legal documents remained ready. Communication strategies stayed in place. And contingency plans for an emergency coronation scenario were reportedly maintained at the highest level of readiness. Then came the most surprising development of all. A small ceremony held quietly inside the Chapel Royal. Not the grand spectacle of Westminster Abbey, but a controlled gathering attended by only 11 individuals. According to insiders, the event confirmed William's new practical role in guiding the monarchy during this uncertain period. Catherine stood beside him as a witness, reinforcing the image of stability and succession. Yet the announcement that followed contained one striking detail. It made no explicit reference to the king stepping down. And just when the world thought it understood what had happened, another twist appeared. 3 hours after confirmation of the ceremony, Buckingham Palace released a handwritten letter from Charles himself. The message was brief but powerful. In it, the king acknowledged that his health no longer allowed him to carry the full weight of public responsibility. And then came the line that instantly echoed across the world. "I did not die a king. I lived to crown one." With those words, the narrative changed completely. What had looked like a quiet power struggle suddenly appeared as something else, a calculated transition approved by the king himself. Yet even now, the debate refuses to disappear. Some observers believe William acted exactly as a future monarch should, protecting the stability of the crown before uncertainty could damage it. Others still wonder whether the speed of those decisions crossed an invisible line between duty and ambition. And perhaps that question will haunt the monarchy long after this chapter closes. Because history may one day look back at this moment and ask a single, uncomfortable question. Did William save the